What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 15 top 20 quarterback rankings. I'll also be posting my tight end and defense rankings later today. Running backs, wide receivers posted yesterday. But let's just dive right into Tier 1. This is going to be a one-man tier for me. Josh Allen going up against the Patriots. On paper, this isn't like an amazing matchup, but Josh Allen has just kind of separated himself as the clear-cut QB1. He's first in points per game. He's coming off another nuclear performance, 22 of 28 passing for 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, 9 carries for 78 yards, and another touchdown on the ground. I want to say this is his third game this season with at least 37 fantasy points, so he's got that crazy weekly upside. I know I don't think he had an amazing game the first time they played the Patriots, but he is my QB1, my only Tier 1 player. Then moving into Tier 2, I have Matthew Stafford going up against the Lions. He scored at least 22 fantasy points in 7 of his last 10 games. It's a great matchup against the Lions, who are top 6 in points per game allowed to the quarterback position. And really, after like the first few weeks of the season, Matthew Stafford has just been super consistent. The touchdown numbers have been crazy. He has great weapons with Puka and Devontae Adams. I think he is a great play once again this week. Then I've got Joe Burrow going up against the Ravens, coming off a solid Week 14, 25 of 36 passing, 284 yards, 4 touchdowns. Unfortunately, did have those 2 big interceptions late in that game, but I like the matchup here against the Ravens. They're underdogs, likely going to be a pass-heavy game script. T. Higgins probably not going to play in concussion protocol, with this being his second one of the season. But I still think, Burrow has Jamar Chase. He is still a high-end QB1 to me. Then I've got Jackson Dart going up against the Commanders. In his 8 games as the starter, he's averaging 21.7 points per game. This is a great matchup against the Commanders. They are 4th in points per game allowed to the quarterback position. And then the Giants are getting a lot of respect from Vegas. Their implied point total is all the way up at 24.5, which, just like given the overall injuries this offense has suffered, that is a very strong number. I like Jackson Dart here. I will say, I think with Daboll gone, he's probably going to be using the legs a little bit less, which is good for his long-term health, maybe not great for like his short-term production, but he's still going to have the mobility in there. Someone who is very mobile, Lamar Jackson going up against the Bengals, finally had a bounce-back performance in Week 14, 21.1 fantasy points. That was after scoring under 8 points in his previous 3 games. It's a good matchup against the Bengals, which is why I'm, more back in. If this was like a mid-level to bad matchup, I'd still probably say I need to see like one more bounce-back game out of Lamar Jackson. But like, this is the great matchup going up against the Bengals, 3rd in points per game allowed to the quarterback position. If Lamar Jackson cannot produce in this matchup, might be wraps on him fantasy-wise this season. And then the last guy in Tier 2, Drake May, going up against the Bills. Week 5 against Buffalo was actually Drake May's worst fantasy game of the season. Still put up like 12.1 fantasy points. He's been a super steady option, but it was his worst point game. Bills defense, tough against quarterbacks, 5th fewest points per game allowed to the quarterback position. But Drake May is playing at a super high level. He's got some mobility. He's got just like this super deep group of weapons where you don't have like a true top tier stud wide receiver. You might say Stephon Diggs, but his role at this stage in his career is more of like a 50 to 65% route participation guy. But there's just a lot of dudes who step up, make plays. Hunter Henry, Travion Henderson out of the backfield. Kayshon Bouttie's been fun. Kyle Williams, I want to say in their last game, had that impressive touchdown. So Drake May, not a great matchup, but he still belongs in the tier with these other strong quarterback options. Now moving into Tier 3, our mid to back end QB1s. I'm going to start off this tier with Jalen Hurts. Coming off, it's got to be the worst game he's ever played. 5 turnovers, 4 picks, 1 lost fumble, 2 turnovers on 1 play, which might be the funniest play I've ever seen in the NFL. And he only put up 0.4 fantasy points. So hopefully you weren't starting him like right on the edge of making it into the playoffs. If you still somehow made it in, shout out to you. But even after that rough game, like, he's still the quarterback 6 in points per game. I'm not super scared of this Raiders defense, but like, this Eagles offense just is kind of struggling at this point. It hasn't looked pretty. Obviously, Jalen Hurts coming off a brutal game. So I just didn't think it was quite right to throw him up with those Tier 2 guys. After Hurts, I've got Brock Purdy going up against the Titans. Great matchup, 8th in points per game allowed to the quarterback position. Purdy hasn't been amazing fantasy-wise since coming back from injury, but I do think this is a great get-right spot here coming off the bye for Brock Purdy. Then I've got Dak Prescott going up against the Vikings. Dak has been very consistent, 18-plus points in 4 straight games. He's thrown for at least 320 passing yards in each of his last 3. It's just not a great matchup against the Vikings. They are bottom 3 in points per game allowed to the quarterback position. Hopefully he gets CeeDee Lamb back. He's going to have his weapons. Even in a not-so-great matchup, I still think Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback option. Someone who's been kind of steadily rising over the second half of the season, Trevor Lawrence going up against the Jets. Since week 5, Trevor Lawrence is averaging 18.6 points per game. Jets defense, pretty brutal at this point. The Jaguars are tied for the 4th highest implied point total. And just from like a real-life perspective, Trevor Lawrence has looked really good, back-to-back really strong performances. They're starting to kind of mesh offensively, right? Brenton Strange back in the lineup now. He's kind of settled in. Got BTJ back on the outside. Jacoby Myers having a lot of success over the middle of the field. And then Trevor's playing at a pretty high level. So with the matchup, I do think he is a viable QB1 play this week. And then the last guy in this tier, Patrick Mahomes going up against the Chargers, coming off a brutal week 14, 14 of 33 passing, 160 passing yards, 3 interceptions, no touchdowns, 6.3 fantasy points. And he does draw another tough matchup here against the Chargers, where the Chargers are allowing the second fewest points per game to the quarterback position. We just saw what this defense did to Jalen Hurts, but this is still Patrick Mahomes, still believe in the player, and even coming off a bad game. Like, these are must-win situations here for the Chiefs, and I know they really haven't pulled through in those opportunities so far this season, but I still think Mahomes is playable as a back-end QB1. Now, moving into Tier 4, I'm going to start it off with Baker Mayfield going up against the Falcons. And Baker's really struggled. Under 17 points in 6 of his last 7, under 12 points in 4 of his last 7. But I do think he's going to get Mike Evans back this week, and this ranking is assuming that Evans is back in the lineup. And at that point, hopefully Wirfs also, honestly. But at that point, you're looking at a really strong offensive unit with Evans, Abuka, who hopefully can figure things out, Chris Godwin, got Bucky Irving back for a couple weeks now. Not super scared of this Falcons team at this point. So with health around him, hopefully Baker can figure it out for the playoffs or the fantasy playoffs. After Baker, I've got Jared Goff going up against the Rams. Goff has been very solid this season, quarterback 10 in points per game. I think game script-wise, this could be a decent game for the Lions. They're 5.5-point dogs. This is a tough Rams defense, though, but potentially a lot of passing volume out there. Good to see Amon-Ra return, or he didn't even miss a game, but good to see him back in the lineup in Week 14. He obviously should play again here in Week 15. Then I've got Marcus Mariota going up against the Giants, really hoping that they don't try to push a Jaden Daniels return here. Mariota has been super solid in his 6 starts, 17.6 points per game. And then matchup-wise, it's a great spot. Giants allowing the 2nd most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. And then the last guy in this tier, I really struggled with where I was going to rank Jacoby Brissett, because you look at his production, he should be ranked much higher than this. Then you look at the matchup and you're like, man, should he even crack the top 20 going up against the Texans? But Brissett has just been so unbelievably consistent. He has started 8 games. He has scored at least 18 fantasy points in every single one of them. He has not had one down clunker performance. He's averaging 20.5 points per game as the starter, but he's going up against the worst matchup for opposing fantasy quarterbacks. The Texans are allowing the fewest points per game to the quarterback position. We've seen what this defense has done to 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Just shut down both of them. But then you got Jacoby Brissett, who has just been the garbage time warrior. The passing volume is going to be insane. Him and Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, they've got this amazing chemistry going. So I settled on quarterback 15. I could certainly see an argument for higher. I could also definitely see an argument for lower. I think this is a fair middle ground spot. And then in the 5th and final tier, got some, decent quarterback options with some tough matchups, at least a few of these guys. So Caleb Williams going up against the Browns. We've actually seen a decent amount of passing volume out of this Bears offense. Caleb's attempted at least 32 passes in each of his last 7 games. Bears offense projects fine, 24 implied points, but the Browns are allowing the 4th fewest points per game to the quarterback position. Another tough matchup with Jordan Love going up against the Broncos. Love's had back-to-back really strong performances, 25.8, 19.3 fantasy points, 7 total passing touchdowns in those 2 games. But he draws the Broncos bottom 6 in points per game allowed to quarterbacks. Someone with a better matchup, Sam Darnold going up against the Colts. He's coming off a nice week 14, 20 of 30 passing, 249 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Seahawks projected 28 points, so that's a very high number. They're big time favorites. Colts, unfortunately, are just kind of unraveling. Might be starting the, I think, 44-year-old Phillip Rivers, which is just like hilarious at this point in the season. So it's possible, Darnold has a big day, but it's also possible this is like a lower volume passing performance, very run heavy, if the game kind of gets out of hand. I've got Bo Nix up next as my quarterback 19 going up against the Packers. He hasn't been great as of late, last 5 games, 13.9 points per game, and he does draw a pretty tough matchup here against the Packers, who are allowing the 7th fewest points per game to quarterbacks. And then my final option here, honestly, I debated between a few different guys. Tyler Shuck was in the mix. CJ Stroud was in the mix. I ended up going with 9. JJ McCarthy here going up against the Cowboys. He's coming off a nice week 14, 16 of 23, 163 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Not crazy volume, but it was a blowout game against the Commanders. Put up 20.4 points. And then you just look at the matchup again, right? Cowboys, most points per game allowed to the quarterback position. Now, with the improvements they've made defensively, I don't think they're the single best matchup for quarterbacks, but I still think they're a plus matchup here. So I'm going to ride with JJ McCarthy. He's got a very soft schedule to finish up the season. I did mention him in my waiver wire video, so he will come in here as my quarterback 20. And that is going to wrap it up for my rankings. Stay tuned for the tight ends defenses. Flex rankings coming out either later tonight or tomorrow morning. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.